Hi everyone, my name is Rubina A Khan and welcome to the 20th edition of Rubina's Radar. Today I'm in conversation with a woman who changed the language of fashion in India, Bandana Tewari, sustainable activist and fashion journalist par excellence. Today her voice is heard around the world from her jungle home in Bali where she currently lives. She's been all too familiar with access, excess, and success, from being a heady consumerist to the minimalist that she is now today. She champions minimalism and mindful consumption in every walk of life, not just in fashion. She doesn't just speak green, she lives green and wears green too. Please welcome Bandana Tewari, the global nomad of fashion from Bali, everyone.
Hi everyone. Hello from
Hi,
Bali.
Bandana.
The light is quite dark here because it is close to 9 o'clock. How
Yes.
are you, Rubina?
Thank you for doing this on a weekend, that too from your time out space. And I just want to tell you, tomorrow is the 75th Independence Day of India. And what better day to talk about sustainability than on Independence Day Eve? So you are a great proponent of Gandhi and his principles of, self-reliance and sustainability. So please walk us through what you fervently believe in and have been telling the whole world.
Yes, I do. My life changed when I started reading and deep diving into the philosophies propounded by Gandhi. And I felt that they somehow resonated in the things that we do daily, which is consume, wear clothes, the way we eat, the way we govern ourselves, the way we should be activists in our own rights. And of course, it started with my journey in fashion, and Khadi movement was such an incredible example that you cannot find a similar example anywhere in the world, where an entire revolution that led to the decarbonization of a country like India happened with a metaphor of cloth, the khadi. And the khadi cloth is not just a simple cloth. It is about self-reliance, about dignity of labor. It is about respect. It is about cultural provenance. And so the idea of khadi became way bigger than just something that was being made by hand. It was something that would resonate within your heart, within your soul, your intellectual capacity to understand what respect, dignity, not only for human beings, but for the environment was meant to be. And therefore, Gandhi's Khadi movement today is, in my opinion, and there are experts who are way ahead of the game, I'm still a learner, will tell you that it is a pivotal moment in our humanity to understand how to live and respect not just human beings but any other species, flora and fauna around us. And so
Yeah.
yes, that was
And it's 103 years old, and we're still discussing what he proposed, propagated then and taught Indians how to be self-reliant. 103 years later, we're still discussing how to go back in time and become those people. Isn't that amazing?
Well, we come from a country where old wisdom, whether it's Vedantic wisdom, whether it is wisdom that came from diverse history, wisdom by definition is something that lasts forever, because
Right.
these are wise, profound statements and evaluations and philosophies that have been made that will resonate no matter which part of the world we live in and what era we live in. And
Right.
it's imperative that we revisit all these principles again and again, refresh them perhaps, sort of modernize it, make it into our daily language. That we have the capacity to do. But the
Yeah.
profundity of it all, the simplicity of it all, the poignance, the poetry of it all comes from the wisdom of the past. And that we, as we are about to celebrate our own Independence Day, I think it is extremely important to realize the kind of wisdom that came from our own backyard that
Right.
are now resonating all over the world. Today in fashion, for instance, fashion movements is addressing climate crisis, for instance, like Extinction Rebellion. Everyone should go online and check out what Extinction Rebellion is all about. They quote Gandhi. Gandhi, that is happening today. Idea of protest, for instance, Rubina, that is happening all over the world. Before
Yes.
COVID, And now, because of act of civil disobedience that Gandhi believed in, that we need to stand up not only for our own rights, but the rights of other human beings, other creatures, and how do we want to live in a more egalitarian world. So civil disobedience is what we are seeing being practiced when, there are young people, old people, all of the world fighting for LGBTQ rights, fighting for gender rights, fighting for environment. And it is a way of being disobedient without violence, hopefully, but asserting your right as an individual to say there are systemic changes that need to be made. There are these rules and regulations that we do not subscribe to. So Gandhi professed very clearly that we all had to be activists in our own hearts, that is our birthright. And I think we see it all over the world.
So, listening to you, would it be fair to call him the original disruptor of fashion?
Not at all. I couldn't possibly wear such a heavy mantle and such a profound mantle. There are people who've been working in the field that I work in for.
No, I meant Gandhi. I meant Gandhi. Gandhi is the first original disruptor of fashion.
I think Gandhi is one profound person who led the way. But I think there have been philosophers and very wise people in our history, perhaps even before Gandhi. But we are lucky to come from a country where, there was this incredible human being that led the path for decolonization, not just of a country and geography, but decolonization of the mind. So we are lucky in that front. But is he the only one? I don't think so. I think there have been other people before him and there have been other people after him who have followed on those footsteps. And for that, we should be grateful.
Right. So, Bandana, you went from a life of shimmer and shine and of excess and access and, of course, stupendous success. So, and then there was this uprising in your mind, which led you to becoming a sustainability activist. What was the key moment that made you understand sustainable fashion and understand it so deeply that you adapted that to your way of living?
In all honesty, Rubina, I'm going to say something that's pretty personal. But, we only look at fashion as when we talk about sustainability. But the idea of sustainability is a very holistic term, that you have to be a sustainable human being. That means you are sustainable as a human being that can eat well, that can love well, that can be compassionate, that can be wearing things that don't degrade our environment, that we can be good human beings where we are loving and compassionate and mindful with other human beings. I think a big shift happened to me because I was so unhappy in my personal life. I went through a lot of trials and tribulations. So that level of unhappiness makes you sort of completely inquire your mind. Like, what is going to make me happy? And one of the beautiful journeys in my life is being able to say, okay, I need to calm down. If I need to sort out all the bullshit that's going on in my head, then I need to minimize that noise. And how are the ways I can minimize the noise? And then you start dissecting your world. Okay, I work in fashion. So my fashion agenda now is going to be about minimizing the kind of assault that we, put out in our environment because of our own greed. Um, how am I going to eat so I can feel healthier? Which means that I'm going to eat that is grown locally, that is seasonal. How am I going to love, or how do I want to be loved? How do I get rid of toxic elements in my life so I can flourish as a human being and be kind and mindful and compassionate? So there's not just one thing about sustainability. We are not divided human beings. We are not bifurcated parts. So if I'm sustainable as someone in industry fashion, then I'm sustainable as being in the way I eat, the way I love, where I walk, what I enjoy, how I travel. So it's my deep pain that made me catapult and make a shift in my life. And for that, I'm very grateful for pain, because big changes in life only happen when, there is a huge gear change in your life. Like someone like literally gives you a metaphorical slap in your face and says, wake up. And then you start sort of disassembling your life and then assembling it back in the way you feel you're going to be truthful and authentic.
Yeah. So you moved to Bali with 3 suitcases between you and your daughter Myra. I want to know how many suitcases and cartons did you leave behind? I want to
Well,
know how much
away.
access was too much access.
I
No,
gave
no,
away
excess
a lot.
also.
I gave away a lot. I didn't want to keep too many things. Um, if I kept anything, they were all my beautiful coffee table books because I used to have a library of my own. That was my reference place because I'm a writer, and that's what I collected. Big coffee table books, hundreds of them, which I still, by the way, have in the storage in Bombay. But the rest of the stuff, all the goodies that I very gratefully accumulated in my time of working in fashion, I was very happy to give them away to my friends' daughters, sons, donated for to make more money to give to certain charities, but I didn't keep much. I perhaps kept one box, just of things that I really loved, which I want to give to my daughter. And thankfully, my daughter, I don't think, gives a shit about any of those things that I have kept aside for her. So I can't wait to go back to Bombay, open it, and then maybe make sure that I can generate some money from it so that I can give somebody else. I don't want to keep those things. Not because I didn't value them. Made, beautifully crafted, people should buy beautiful. But I just reached a point where I'm so happy just touching and feeling and appreciating how things are created. But the idea of ownership, that I have to own it, that I have to own it, otherwise it defies my identity. That dystopian world I have happily moved away from. And I'm not saying this in a pompous way. I'm saying in a very humble way that it's nice to appreciate, to buy my, but you don't have to have in excess. Please buy things that you can love forever, but you don't need 20, 30, 40 pairs of shoes for what?
Yeah.
The same
That's
way
rather
we
admirable.
buying t-shirts just because nothing is cheap. Someone's paying for it.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So what was the most striking difference from moving from a concrete jungle like Bombay to a real jungle like you call it in Bali? What is the biggest difference to adapt?
Well, oh my God, literally the first thing was the number of insects and snakes and geckos that you will just abandon. The sounds that you hear, you don't even look at your watch because you know that the cicadas start at 9, at around 11, big geckos that have a very particular sound. You know those noises, it's that particular time. It was because we live in like, concrete jungle, like, air-conditioned apartments. I know that we have malaria and what have you, but for a lot of us urban people, we lived very, very sanitized homes. So the idea of feeling frightened because a snake is going to come to the house was unheard of. But over time, my daughter and I, we became quite fearless. By the way, it's not like I'm living in a hut. Bali is a beautifully well developed little township that has all the best cafes and vegan food, and it's fun and it's cool. So I'm not literally living in a hut, but we have very close proximity to nature. We have paddy fields all around. The farmers are there farming with, as you would see here, for instance, without any, not a care, but without any fear, because these farmlands have all kinds of insects and creatures and what have you. So sometimes they come slithering into your own home, and you just got to accept it. The fact is, that was something that reminded us how different the look was.
Right.
Yeah, and apart from
So
that,
I would think that the most abused word in the pandemic is the new normal. So I guess Bali was your new normal to nature.
we always had that. I think the idea of normal is like, I don't like new normal.
Yeah.
No, it's normal. It was normal to understand an agrarian culture. Uh, our country is an agrarian culture, right?
Majority.
So there about me coming to a forest. It, it's there. It's just that we don't see it in our metros. If you come to where I live, my dad lives, which is in Sikkim, up in the north, or if you go to Punjab, there are farms everywhere. So this idea of new normal is like as if you've gone into like another sphere, an alternative universe. It was all there. It's just we chose not to see it. We chose to just live in that little parameter, that circumference of, urbanization and development and what have you.
Yeah.
We all know our grandparents' houses that are outside cities, life is pretty normal as they should be in the cities.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you go around in Bali? Are you biking it? Are you walking a lot? How do you commute there?
I don't use the bike. I don't own a car. It's pointless because we have the equivalent of an Uber here called Gojek, which I love. So we have Gojek bikes, and they're all boys who are running their bikes who live in my vicinity. They're like buddies now, and they just drive you around. It gives local people money at difficult times, and I certainly don't need to own a car or a bike, maintain it, and all that. We don't need that. It's such a wonderful coexisting mechanism
Community.
where all share this bike. And just like I'm a big fan of Airbnb and shared transportation. So yeah, I walk a lot, yes, and I use my Gojek bike, which is super cool.
So let's talk about in practicality how many wonderful things you're doing in Bali. One is that you auctioned and put up for sale an Italian designer bag. The funds that you collected for Indonesian teenagers for an art collective. Tell us more. That how did the idea come about, and how did the brand feel about it?
Oh, okay. So we've, not just me. There are a lot of people like me who do similar stuff, I suppose. So we started off something called Bali Swap, which is basically we organized massive events where we swapped clothes. There was no money exchanged. It was like a community event where people from all walks of life came and they gave their clothes and then took back what they wanted. And there was love and sharing and camaraderie, and it was wonderful. So it started off with that. And I'm lucky I still get wonderful gifts from designers, the ones who haven't forgotten that I did work for them for a long time. I'm so far away, but they're very kind to send one made sustainably. And Gucci worked on a capsule collection with recycled nylon that is made from fishing nets. And it's a beautiful bag. And when it arrived, of course I loved the bag. Of course I would have loved to use it. And it's recycled. It ticked a lot of boxes for me. But then I thought, you know what? I'm very grateful I got this gift. So I sort of sold it on Instagram. It's there on my feed. Ambika, who's a TV star in India, was the first person to put up a hand and buy it. And that money went to support an art exhibition for Indonesian teenagers who did a fantastic job. So wherever I get an opportunity and sell a product to friends, I sell it at a cost price. I make no profit, zero. 100% goes to for whichever project that I'm supporting. But most of the times, and even when I do talks, I do give my speaker fee. I donate that to the Indonesian teenagers projects, because this is the time. I live in their country right now. If I was living in India, I would do this for the Indian teenagers. But I'm in Indonesia. I see such talent all around, and we, as people in the industry, need to do everything we can to support them. So yeah. So I hope, they'll come to me, the more they will be auctioned off and more will go to.
Please, everybody, send her the bag. She's doing good stuff with them. It's repurposing and redirecting in the best way possible.
Yes. and with great gratefulness to the brands who have sent them to me. This is not about uh, selling or giving away things that I don't value. They are valuable. They're made with a lot of heart, expertise, skills. I respect it very much. I just feel that the money that comes out of it would help someone directly, and I am in favor of doing that than hanging on to a bag that I'll put in a.
Right. So let's talk about every fashion house and businesses. They have ecological integrity, but I find that the applicability of the same in their businesses is almost zero or even negligible. Why do you think there's so much talk but no action taken by people when they talk about the new things that they should be doing to save the climate and the people?
Beats me, Rubina. It just shocks me to no end that billions of dollars are spent because two, three billionaires want to go giggle in space when those billions could go to
Right.
countries that need vaccination now or need food right now. When I watch Richard Branson and Jeff Bezos, they're going into space, and I know we all know billions of dollars go into it, right? And then they are the ones who are not paying, or at least Amazon is not paying fair wages to its thousands and thousands of people all over. I find that inhumane. So there's one thing that you can do individually. I can make certain changes in my life as you can with anyone who's listening, right? But here we are talking about a power structure, these big companies, big fast fashion companies, by the way, that are manufacturing mostly in our part of the world.
Right.
They're manufacturing in the Indian subcontinent, they're manufacturing in Asia, especially in Indonesia, and fueling, and I talk about this a lot, fueling the consumerism in the West world while doing such great service to our part of the world. So these power structures have to be questioned because just you and me, we can make individuals, but look at the power structure, the amount of money that is controlled, the
I
kind
know.
of corporations that are allowed, the political policies, the lobbying that takes place that will not allow policy changes to be made that can fuel. So in that it's at fault. Okay? That doesn't take away the responsibility that all of us have individually that we can do.
Yes.
Because it's very easy for me to sit back and say, companies have no balls to make any changes. What can I do to change the world? But this is where I go back to Gandhi. It's like every unit makes the whole. Personal responsibility leads to change. There was all these changes I hear about in the world, whether it is for this right or that right, environment, the clothing business. It all starts with a voice, one person who's willing to make the change, and that momentum builds with authenticity. And that's all we as individuals, as regular citizens, have in our kitty of tools. But ultimately, we need to hold our governments responsible. We need to hold our corporations responsible. So I'm very glad for social good. They get called out, you know.
Yeah, indeed. So now let's take it to a little lighter vein. So I think sustainable is like the new love word. Everyone's heard of it, but the deeper meaning of it is lost in translation. So I'd like you to walk us through how can people, general people, adapt to sustainability in their everyday life? Instead of the bigger picture, how can each one support it?
Eve of Independence Day, I'm going to go back to philosophy because I don't think there's any change that can happen unless the change comes from your inner self, right?
Mm-hmm.
In Sanskrit, there's beautiful terms as Vasudeva Kutumbakam. The universe is your family. When we start internalizing and owning the environment we live in, that we coexist with other beings, that there is an interconnectedness between me and the cosmos, the micro me and the macro universe, that we are interconnected, that we're made of the same minerals that stars are made of. We are made of carbon and hydrogen and nitrogen. Stars are made of. So if we start thinking philosophically about how interconnected we are, then you want to start just then every flower that you look at looks beautiful and is valuable. Every tree that is, cut down hurts you. And every dog that is kicked, the fur that you wear on your shoulder does not sit well. That comes from a sense of ideological shift. That can't be taught just in textbooks. So you can keep talking about sustainability and it means like, sorry, I want to use a bad word, but I'm just not going to. But it doesn't mean much because it's so vague. But if you're going to be a sustainable human being, which means you're going to be kinder to the environment, kinder to the people, understand where your stuff comes from, whether it is the toothbrush that you are using, to a headband, to the clothes that you wear, to the shoes, how are they made? Who makes them? Who's being pillaged? Which country is being pillaged? Which country is being New York colonized for its wealth? All of it, then we start really thinking about what we are buying, what our wallet is being pulled out for, what is my personal choice when I go to the market to buy something. That is my choice. So I feel ideology, we need an ideological shift, that we need a change in heart before there's a change in action.
Listening to you, which is something I believe in, that do you think the pertinent need for sustainability today is because of the lack of human interaction, the lack of human beings around nature? Like there's a system breakdown already, and is it because of those things? Everything is so on a screen that you just say, okay, I'll make a decision based on what is perceivable to me from the screen, because there's no human interaction per se. But living where you are, you like to live in the community. There's interaction, so you feel the sense of responsibility. But in the bigger cities, it's all about insulation, and what we get comes on a touch of a screen. So, is it because of that that sustainability is even more paramount today to be in our mindset?
It's funny, we are such hypocritical human beings. When I say we, including me, is that every time we think of a holiday, our holiday is always great because, you went to the beach or you the forest, you stayed in a cabin, you walked barefoot, you picked flowers, you ate what the farmers were selling. We actually, we actually really, as human beings, enjoy that because it's such a big part of our nature. But we always club ourselves as saying, oh, but when we live in a city and you're urbanized, but we're the very people who love those experiences of touching them with our naked feet, right? So let's stop
Yeah.
saying only because I'm living in an urban world, I can't, I won't. That's just dividing your mind into two. That you're like, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. That you, 1 minute you're this person in the city, and the next minute you go to Goa and you're sitting on the sand, and then you realize how wonderful the earth is. I think the idea of being sustainable really is really owning your own self and saying,
Yeah.
I'm the same who can sitting in a bed on worldly sea face, and how can I make my life more accessible to the wonders of the earth? Is can I plant? Can I have flowers in my house? Can I spend my weekends going to a farmer's market instead of going into a grocery store where you're buying stuff that's coming from 2 continents away? Your own engagement in your own community. And I see, when I was in Bombay, it was already happening. You could go and buy amazing organic food. Now I know that because of COVID, like people are ordering a lot of really good healthy food online that's coming straight from the farms. This is just a way of acknowledging to yourself that like this whole urban rural divide that we've imposed on ourselves has to go away. And we need to find ways and means to, yes, to be reconnected with nature. Because I'll tell you, there's nothing more healing, and that has healed me. Living in Bali, however scared I was of all the jungle, I saw so much fatty fields, as I told you, snakes and creatures. It also humanized me. It made me feel I'm just one of those species that exist,
Yeah.
not the only species that pillage the universe for profit. So the more we are connected to nature, yes, the more sustainable you will become, because that's a journey. Just wearing a cotton t-shirt today and saying I'm sustainable, that's a little farcical. It has to be holistic. It has to encompass everything that you do in your life, which is not to say you're not going to buy, which is not to say that everyone's got to be vegetarian. That's not the point. It's just being interconnected and understanding that your decisions that you make every day with your own hard earned money that you pull out from your own pocket can affect change.
Yeah. I think walking the ground we live on is the best earthing and the best grounding we'll ever receive. That's what I feel. So we come back to vintage and secondhand clothes, which is, the best way that people are, trying to make it very popular. But people are still very resistant to worn clothes. And of course, unless it's worn by Tom Cruise, I mean, vintage clothing, seriously,
Oh, come
is
on,
not.
get over
Yeah, I know. So it's like seriously not a thing yet. But it actually can control the demand for new products and will also control the supply chain if more people, started wearing and repairing their own clothes as well as vintage. It can be vintage from home. It doesn't have to be from someone else's home. And secondhand can be from your own cousins or something. But
Rubina, I think all we need to do, because all these ideas seem like, oh, arrived now, secondhand clothing, vintage clothing. Go and talk to your grandmothers and your
right.
grandfathers. That's exactly what they did. Not one person that I know in any part of the world, any culture, will ever deny that grandfathers and grandmothers' culture, they always passed on their clothes. They didn't throw everything in. Think about saris in India. Which person do you know puts a sari into it? That was like last, never do that, right? So we just need to go back to customs that were followed by families. We've just forgotten in this process. Yes, today, second-hand clothing, they say in the reports that say it, is going to be as big, if not bigger, than fast fashion companies, because there's a huge demand now for, especially the millennials and the post-millennials. They are beholden to be more responsible because they are growing up in an environment that's going to change drastically,
Right.
But I think the idea of secondhand clothing basically means don't throw it away. There's somebody else, as you would pass it on to your siblings, and the siblings would pass it. Oh, I would pass it on to my daughter. We've seen this happen in any part of the world, in our families, with our cousins and aunts, the older generation. We just need to reinstate that and believe that, that those are all very functional things to do. So I find this whole idea of vintage is such a new thing, so cool, and everyone's fashion. I need to go to it. That's what it
But
was.
even bridal wear in India, it was passed down. Your great grandmother's clothes were worn by the new brides, and it was just a bit tweaked for the size and everything. But it was such a thing any which way in India. I don't know why that's not adaptable in a general spectrum. But I guess the more conversation around this,
That's why it was called trousseau. That it would be passed down from generation to generation. It's the hyper consumerism, and there are a lot of forces at play. But we've been taught now that newer and faster is the mantra of our times. And we've fallen for hook, line, and sinker. If it's not new, that means your personality is stale, that you're not on top of the game. I mean, I look at feel really sorry for those people who need to wear new clothes every time they post something. The whole idea of like wearing something twice or thrice seems unrealistic to them. But what they're doing is fueling, and what actually tells us is that they've become victims to a consumerist agenda that tells you faster and faster, newer and newer, and that leads to a very disposable economy. And what's happening is when we say faster and faster, newer and newer, that means we accumulate and then we throw. And so every second there's a garbage truck full of clothes that goes into landfills or are burnt. Every second, a massive garbage truck. When we just imagine that, how vile and how violent it is to our environment. When we start imagining our actions in that way, then I think we start making little changes in our lives. Start with those little changes, that's good enough. But let's please not fall into the consumers that lead these markets. So if you keep falling for it, the market machinery will keep giving it to you again and again, newer, faster and faster. And to everyone who's listening, there's a great book called Stuffocation. We are getting suffocated by the stuff that we purchase. So we are stuffocated. I think it's very important that we understand how we're being led to the brink of extinction now, because consumerism has gone to heights where there's no humanity left. And we still have a
Isn't
brain.
consumerism sounds like such a drug that no one is going to rehab for. I mean, people need to go to rehab for consumerism.
Yeah, I mean, well, you can call it an addiction. You know, there is an addiction. There is a shopping addiction. There's novelty. The addiction of novelty is the heroine of our times. To have new and new all the time is an addiction. So in my talk about fashion diet, because we go on so many diets to cleanse our systems, right? We go on very difficult diets, and there's no reason why we shouldn't go on a shopping diet. Which doesn't mean that you don't value creative people. It doesn't mean that you don't buy things. But to buy in excess, buy out of greed, buy without knowing that how it affects other people because you're buying cheap. That someone sitting in Cambodia in a factory that made your very, very cheap t-shirt that looks cool for 2 days and you're going to throw it is not being paid the right amount. That Bangladesh factory worker suffering. I mean, there's a whole interconnected loop which shows the disharmony and the violence in the way we consume. So it's the awareness that we need to have. That when we buy, which we must, because we need to support the economy that supports families, right? But we need to know and be aware what we are buying. And when we see there is no transparency, stability, then we need to hold those companies accountable. And we have the tools in our hand through our smartphones. You can, you asked me, what we do on a daily basis to understand how we buy. We've got this phone in front of us. We can go onto the websites of brands. We can, what is the CSR policy? What do they do to give back to local communities? How do they look after artisans, factory workers? All that. If they are not accountable for
or
that,
even if the designers are paying, or even if the designers are paying the people, because there's so many stories of designers not paying for the work that the artists do for them. So that when you know that, then you don't need to support those people. So these are the kind of questions one must keep in mind when making a purchase. Is that what you're saying? You should ask yourself the questions if it meets the boxes of what you're comfortable with. Yeah.
No, you inform yourself. You can Google it now. You can go onto the Instagram. You have with you. You have every right to inform yourself. And as you should. And then make an informed decision that is good for you, good for the others, and good for the environment.
Yeah. So, Bandana, people think sustainable living is not luxurious at all. But there's a whole component to sustainability being very luxurious. Can you please expand on certain tangible aspects of that?
Well, we have to redefine luxury, because for me, luxury is being able to eat food that is grown in my backyard. Luxury for me is to be able to go to a village which is in the next island in Indonesia, in Sumba, and seeing beautiful fabrics being made by hand, and I can turn that into a jacket. That could not be more luxurious in my eyes. So we need to define what luxury is. If luxury is equivalent to living a beautiful, sustainable, mindful life that appreciates aesthetic beauty, time that it takes to make things, the slowness of things, then I think it's the sustainability can be extremely luxurious. Because what's the opposite of that? Like everything, if it's fast, if it's made quick, then it's a McDonaldization of our lives. So are you telling me McDonald's is luxury? If everything has to be, everything has to be instant, everything has to like just feed your taste buds because all those preservatives have gone into your mouth, and it's then what? Is McDonald's luxury? No. So let's define what luxury means. To me personally, it's slow. It's accepting where I live, my region, the provenance, the culture, the people. Um, it's respect, it's dignity, all of it.
So when you travel, everyone talks about carbon emissions and carbon footprints. What would constitute sustainable travel? Because I know you're going to travel soon, so I'd like to learn.
This is one.
I want to see you traveling on an elephant. Is that sustainable?
No,
I'm not sure.
No. Don't make me out into a stereotype of some jungle princess.
Apologies.
In fact, for me, it is my biggest challenge because I still haven't figured out what my agenda is going to be when I do start traveling. Of course, I'm not going to be traveling that much because it's going to be way more expensive and all of that. But I haven't found a solution. I'll tell you. I know that people can say you can offset your carbon footprint of travel by planting trees somewhere, but it's been done to an extent where it's a form of greenwashing by big companies to produce fossil oils, for instance, but they'll say, oh, we are planting 3 million trees somewhere else, and then it gives them the justification to continue to excavate the earth for fossil fuels. So there is a lot of greenwashing in this, like the carbon footprint and how you can offset that. So in all honesty, I haven't figured that out.
When you do, I'd like to know because I'd like to adopt that.
Yeah, but hold on, Rubina. But I do know one that when I travel, I will go to a place for a longer time so I can immerse myself for a longer time, respect the culture, understand where I'm going, be more immersed and more engaged and more fulfilled by one trip as opposed to how we were traveling, including me before COVID. Come back home and boast to my friends that, in the last 10 days, I was in 3 countries, dipping in and out of 3 great cities in Europe, and then you're sort of like gloating about it. I think that is not going to be my agenda anymore. If I do go to a place, I would love to immerse myself and be engaged, buy local, support their local crafts, the artisans, eat local food. Like, really, if I'm going to Mexico, there's no way in hell I want anything that is not authentically Mexican. And I want to experience and embody their culture, right? I don't need to find a diluted version or the globalized version of what Mexico is. So that I know, but that offsetting my travel footprint, I'm still challenged. And if I do get to a point where I have some knowledge about it, I will let you know.
Thank you. So you do practice sustainable eating. Can I understand what it is beyond local and seasonal produce? Is there more to it? Because I'd like to understand that.
You stop using sustainable eating. That sounds a little corny. I eat healthy.
Listen, I'm new at this. You're the activist. I'm just questioning it. I want to learn. I want to school myself.
Well, to be a sustainable being, then the idea that you eat what's seasonal. Please buy local produce. There's no point. Like, I remember when I was living in Bombay, I didn't even realize till I noticed after years of eating it in the label that my asparagus came from Peru. I mean, it had to travel 3 continents. That's possibly going to be good for you. So I started getting that like thin and but it was local. It's as nutritious. So buy local. Eating a box of strawberries to arrive from another country. You find what is local. You eat what's local. support the local farmers. They need us right now very much. I see it around here in Indonesia too. And eat healthy. This is not to tell anyone to turn vegetarian, not vegetarian. Everyone has their own choices. But I think we need to. How can you be clear in your head, heart, and your mind if you're going to bastardize your body with toxins that that are also being peddled to us? I mean, you don't want to go into the whole Monsanto story, but that's for another talk one day.
Right. So I don't know if you agree, but consumerism is like almost like the seven deadly sins, which have become the social commandments of living today. In every walk of life, we have so much excess, whether it's food, whether it's fashion, whether it's conversation, whether it's social media, everything is over. The seven deadly sins into social commandments of today. I don't know if it's blasphemous, but I do believe that. But why can't we control ourselves in swasayam, which is abstaining and abstinence from over? Everything is over. It's like OTT has become like a thing for everything, right?
Yeah.
So we have to practice it ourselves.
Well,
so you're saying mind over. Sorry, you were saying?
I think personal choice, right? I don't think it's going to continue for. How can people live with consuming more and more? Anything, COVID has reminded us how little we need, and that, or how embarrassed I would be personally if I got more than I needed at a time like this. When families are suffering, when food shortage, when access is not there, for jobs are being lost. How can I look like an excessive consumerist now? It's almost shameful in my mind. And I'm not pointing a finger at anyone. For me, it's embarrassment to my own self. So I do believe that if all of us start thinking about the ramifications of our own personal decisions then it's easy to then start cutting down. It doesn't mean take away the joy of your life, Variety is the spice of life. All of that is wonderful. But excessiveness to the point where you become inhumane in the choices that you make, that you are not aware of the person next to you, the pains that other people feel because you are so busy consuming that you don't see the shortage in somebody else's life. That has to call.
Yeah, of course. So there is the metabolism of clothes. Can you talk us through the metabolism of clothes? Like we have metabolism in our bodies. I've also heard of this 30 wear test. Have you ever tried that? That you buy something, if you can see in your mind that you can wear it at least 30 times and you buy it. Is that a good way to measure?
Never heard of it. Someone's put a number to it?
Yeah, it's a company that analyzes trends, and it's called the Eco Age. So they call it the 30 wear test.
Okay.
It's their test.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but again, context is about, because if you're talking about a salwar kameez or a sari, how does that work? We hold on to these things for life.
And jeans too.
Jeans, sure. What I'm saying is, what's the context? I think Eco Age, which is lovely because I'm a big fan of Eco Age. I did not hear of this 30. What is it?
30 wear test. So when you want to shop for something, you ask yourself, can I wear it 30 times? And if the answer most likely will be no, then you don't buy it.
Okay, that's great. I think it's nice to put a good number that is reasonable, that's achievable. But at the same time, why not buy things that you can keep forever? If it gets torn, you mend it. What's the big deal? We grew up with our mothers and our grandmothers sewing that were torn, and so about keeping them even longer. And them longer comes with the idea that what you buy is made well, right? So we buy things of value and then we keep them longer and pass them on when you don't want them.
Yeah. I can only tell you what has passed the 30-day test in my life. Jeans and my skin. And my skin. I've been wearing my skin
cream.
for a while. My skin. I've been wearing my skin for a while. It is being repurposed a lot. Very. So, tell us about, Ralph Lauren started a rental subscription to his Lauren line. Is that in any which way going to lead the path for minimizing buys? Because then there is another theory to rentals too. Is renting the answer?
It's such a small little dip in renting. There is swapping. I think it's wonderful, but that's not going to be. That's like a little drop in the ocean of consumerism.
Yeah.
We need way big changes. Of course, these are designer brands. These are legacies, right? So they're not creating an excess like, let's say, fast fashion companies are. So our dialogue about what is sustainable also has to work within systems of if they're artisanal or they're legacy brands, which are all your designer brands, fast fashion companies that are making millions and billions and billions. So the change has to come from the top. I love all these young brands or even these top-notch designer brands that make all these moves to like, okay, now you can rent, now you can swap, you can rent off the ramp. All these lovely movements taking place, they're wonderful. They should be encouraged. But what we need are bigger changes where you're talking about factories that employ 20, 30,000 people. You'll find them in Java, in India, you'll find them in Bangladesh, you'll find them in Cambodia that are making billions of clothes to feed the world, where, we are being told buy faster and faster, newer and newer. Those are the systemic changes that we need for impact. While we appreciate all these small gestures that are being made by certain brands, which are wonderful, should be encouraged, it's the big, powerful brands that have shops in every corner of the earth and have multiple shops in each country where they own the supply chain, they own the production chain, they control how cotton is grown in countries like India and China. Those systemic changes are required for a massive change. In the meantime, as consumers, yes, we can make choices to buy secondhand, go to designers who will rent. Those are things that we should applaud. But as an activist, we have to keep an eye out for what are the changes that will make the big impact, not just for privileged people like you and me, but to a larger community and consumers.
So, Bandana, we've had this conversation where do you think, how does a young Indian brand, even try to be sustainable with the limitations that they have? Because none of the Indian brands so far are entirely sustainable in terms of ethical practices towards their design teams and others. Yeah, sure. But in terms of the environment, not really sure. Do you think there's a brand that is sustainable out and out in India?
There is no brand in the world that is 100% sustainable. We as human beings, we have a carbon footprint that we are never going to be 100% sustainable, leave alone a clothing company that will be. But yes, can they have sustainable practices that do less harm to the environment? Absolutely, yes. And in fact, Rubina, I see with younger brands, because they're small, they're controlled, and a lot of these younger brands grew in an environment where sustainability was very much part of the dialogue, in the creative dialogue. So they started planting their seeds of sustainability as their companies grew. So these mid to small independent brands all over the world that are now making every part of the world, having shops in every part of the world. I know the people who will resonate with their aesthetic. They are probably the ones I admire the most because they do have sustainable practices injected into their production, their manufacturing, their packaging, you name it. They look at the whole circular economy and work through it. Smaller brands. And it's achievable when you started your brand with the ethics of sustainability. So as the company grows, your sustainable practices also grow. So I'm a big fan of the smaller brands that have their production, their manufacturing, the inventory in control, not the ones that are producing thousands, millions and millions and millions, and then dumping the excess garbage, excess clothes in, landfills, or burning
Yeah.
them,
Yeah.
because they don't sell them at a discount. That I
Yeah.
find graceful.
Yeah. I've heard of that. Yes. We know the brands that do it too. So, Bandana, because you've lived in India for such a long time, everybody thinks that you're Indian. You look beautifully Indian, but let's walk people through your Nepalese heritage. You grew up in Sikkim, and you went to school in Darjeeling. So I want to know, and of course, you worked across India, particularly in Bombay. Which place influenced your authentic voice to the max?
I have to say, yes, I am Nepali. People, my mom and dad both Nepali. I'm Indian. I'm an Indian passport holder. I grew up in India. I studied in India. Never left the country to do anything but to travel because of my work. And now I'm living in Indonesia. Um, and yes, I'm from Sikkim. I was in boarding school in Darjeeling. I speak Nepali to all my beautiful friends up in the north. Hello. Um, I I cannot take away what Sikkim means to me. That is my motherland. I was born there. I was born in a village there, and then I went to school in Darjeeling. But the place that changed the way I thought about my studies and what I would like to not like to pursue, but what kind of a person I wanted to be, which is essentially be a geek and I read a lot of books.
A
Was
very fashionable geek, very
culture.
fashionable.
When I was in, I can't get myself to say Kolkata still, but I
Mhm.
studied for years there, and it really defined my academia. And for that, then of course, I was in Delhi, I was in Bombay, and I love both the cities very much. And I'm as Indian and as you are, but yes, my provenance is Nepali, and it's my mother tongue, and my favorite food is Nepali food. Yeah.
Wonderful. So tell me, what do you love about your metamorphosis so far? Like you've lived heady consumerist life, you've lived, obviously now a
Uh,
minimalist life. You've traveled to villages, to fashion weeks. What is the best part of of Bandana Tewari's metamorphosis today?
there's no metamorphosis. You're making me sound like I was a monster and then I became like a different
No, I
now.
mean like
Hey,
people
I'm
blossom into different
a
versions
part
of themselves.
my metamorphosis. Make it sound like, what I do like
Metamorphosis is not relegated only to butterflies and larvae. It's for everything in life.
okay, okay, I'll tell you the little things because essentially I haven't, sure, I'm still the same person. I love to go to a great party ever so often. I have a good life. I love to enjoy it, all of it. The thing that I'm very proud of in this metamorphosis that you're talking about is that I don't need to be anything for anyone or sort of have anyone hijack my personality. This is me sitting in the front row of walking on the street or I'm on a paddy field. I don't care. Because for a long time it was we all played our roles. We had to put on a face, as we said. And that
Mhm.
putting on the face
Game face.
can get very tiring. So I find that very liberating that this is me. I can be sitting in a conference with 1,000 people face to face. Here I am on IG Live. I could be walking. This is what you're going to get, and that is very liberating. And that comes with all the that I can be me. Me is like foolish. Me who can be geeky. Me who can be cocky and funny and I think that is so important because we as women need to recognize that of all the
Yes,
things that fashion great disservice to, one of them was a gender disservice, where it tells you that a woman has to be many parts. How many times have we told, oh, if you go to a cocktail, that's the cocktail look. When you go to pick up
I
your children,
know.
that's what you have to wear. When you go to a conference room with, sitting around a table with executives who are men, then you have to wear the power suit. Our individuality and our personality has been hijacked over and
Yes.
over again by fashion. I'm not going to subscribe to it anymore. This is me. I'm going to go to a meeting like this. I'm going to sit and talk like this online, and I'm not going to. And I think that for women, especially consumerist agenda, where we are told if you have to wear 5 different things in a day to look like 5 different people dressed, the black tie dress, the school dress, damn, we are the biggest consumers.
I
and
know.
we're being foolish about how much we are spending.
Right. Well said. So, when was the last time you shopped? Sorry, I lost you there. What did you say?
Yeah, so that's
what did you say? So, when was the last time you shopped, online or in a brick and mortar store?
I haven't shopped online at all. The only thing I've ever bought online, and that also years back, was some books, but I've not bought anything really
Very good.
online.
You are practicing Sway Sanyam very well.
Yeah, because there's like more than 34. There are more than 30 containers that are going up and delivering organic toothpaste. So I try not to order online because I can buy it.
Defeats the purpose. Defeats the purpose.
I have got. That's
Yeah.
why I don't shop. But I've got beautiful fabrics. If I'm in India, I will always buy saris. I do beautiful T-shirts that are made from bamboo fabric here in Bali. I have beautiful Balinese silk, beautiful capes that I love to wear. It's not that I don't buy things, but I don't shop online, funnily enough. That's another story. Don't
Oh,
get
I
into
love
it.
this. I love this.
Jewelry that is made from recycled
Wonderful,
fun.
beautiful.
Recycled by gypsy bells.
Yeah.
And I'm wearing, by the way, this is an old, a beautiful Indian Nicobar. This is a Nicobar. I'm full of like shells and stones and all that, I'm a bit of a jungle girl.
So, what is the most cherished? What is the oldest and most cherished piece of clothing or jewelry that you own? I mean, mostly clothing, actually.
All my mother's, my grandmother and my mother's saris. They're the most cherished, and I will never, ever throw them. I will pass them on to people whom I love. But they are my most treasured. My mom's and my grandmother's saris. I have them here out. Right.
So, Banna, since you have been an integral part of fashion weeks across the world, particularly in India, I have a question. Why do our models on and off the runway adhere to a North Indian look? Why can't our models be representative of our 28 states and 8 union territories? Like, why is every region of the country not celebrated in fashion in terms of the quintessential way? Why is it just a North Indian aesthetic? What do you think that is?
Well, Rubina, we also have to give a little credit where it's due. It's changed a lot. Today we do see a lot more diversity. I promised you when I started out in the fashion business, and as I told you, I'm Nepali, I'm from the Northeast. We would not see anyone from the Northeast in fashion magazines, in newspapers. There's nothing, as if the entire Northeast, land of the six sisters, didn't exist. We were invisible. That was one of the joys of my previous job, was introducing stories where we started putting, before the hashtag culture of diversity and color and gender became really famous and cool and what have you. I remember making sure that we had stories, if not, not on the cover. It wasn't going to happen at that point, but to have stories which included faces from the Northeast, just as there should be faces from down south. Yes, there are magazines now. South Bombay Bibles. Uh, there's only two cities that seem to matter in India: this is Bombay and Delhi, and we forget. My God,
Yeah,
in
so
our own
much.
national we literally have the whole geography charted out, and lifestyle magazines have just relegated to 2, 3 metropolitan cities, and I think it does a lot of disservice because we know the second tier cities that are bubbling with life, with aspirations, with great potential for great businesses, they get completely sidelined, and more so if you're from the Northeast. So I'm a big champion, supporter
Yes.
of regions that are not represented. And I
And the
will do
craft of the
anything.
Northeast, Assam, Sikkim, I mean, the craft, the handmade clothes, I mean, they're just beautiful and so practical. There should be so much more, talk on those regions, which I'm sure we will continue, like the conversations I'm having with you. So even skin is such a global conversation, but I personally think uh, the brown, the palette of brown is very diverse in India, like the looks of India. Why is skin also just relegated to one brown fits all? Everybody's, oh, she's a very dark skinned girl. Oh, she's dark skinned, and that's it. We've done our tokenism. There's so many shades. It's beautifully, very light brown to caramel to, I don't know, all the coffee shades. I mean, I can't even say it properly. I'm quite embarrassed to bring this up, but it is true, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a given that we have all types of shades of brown, all types of shades of black. I mean, where do I start? We have a very colonized mind still, where we think
Yeah.
the idea of being fair, it gentrifies you. That just how it started out. If you were very, very fair, that means out into the fields to work, and therefore you didn't burn in the sun. Therefore, you were not dark, which meant you had enough money to stay at home. And therefore, if you were rich, you were fair. If you were gentrified, you were fair. So that kind of colonized uh, behavior went from generation to generation, and so it takes a lot of time to come out of it because your whole cosmetic industry is based on making you look fair in a country of brown people. And so, but it is being dismantled. It is being
I see
dismantled.
that.
Social media, huge role, and I feel very optimistic because now big brands that, if any, can you imagine? We used to live in a country where the biggest selling whatever cream was Fair and Lovely. Like the whole notion that Fair and Lovely is, it's like you tick a box of acceptability, and beyond that there is nothing else. If you were not fair, you were not lovely. I mean that I think that's gone now. That's all
Yeah.
going because it's
Going. Present
unacceptable.
continuous. Yeah. It's going.
The present generation is unacceptable.
Yeah. So now I'm going to ask you my last bits, which are the quick ones about Bandana the person. What do you like to eat or drink every day?
Wine. Okay.
Why did I know that you're going to
I
say that?
love to. Well, you said drink. I love wine. I love wine, but
Eat
I
and drink.
love.
Eat and drink.
I I'm best Ayurvedic with masoor, and I have got the ghee from my grandfather's farm in Sikkim. I make the best Ayurvedic dal. I put tons of veggies. It's my comfort food. I have that with basmati rice, of course. And then in the evening, yes, I love to have a glass of wine, 2, sometimes 3.
Wonderful. What's the first thing you do in the morning and the last thing at night?
The first thing I do in the morning is I do my Surya Namaskar. I wake up very early. I know I don't look like it. I wake up really early. I do my Surya Namaskar. Then I potter around because I go and pick flowers because I did so many flowers. There's so much flowers all around me. So I pick flowers. Then I light my incense and I put the on my Spotify. I have a whole like chanting in the morning. So my whole morning is this beautiful lull. And then yeah, that's how I start my
The
day
last
every
thing you
morning.
do at night?
Netflix, thank you.
Okay. What do you turn to when you're anxious? Do you like the food you turn to when you're anxious?
Oh, tacos.
Okay. What keeps you moving forward and what do you want your legacy to be?
Ew, how is your legacy? Like, that's for famous people. I have no legacy. I have no intention of having
You
any
are
legacy.
the most famous South Asian voice in sustainable fashion and otherwise from our
I didn't
part of the
say that.
world. So, yes, you are famous. Let's not wear that lightly.
Okay, I
Okay,
didn't make up
okay.
those words. I didn't say those words.
I
I
said
have
that.
no legacy. I
I
can
said
tell you.
that.
Okay, so there's no legacy. Moving forward, what I would
No, no.
like
What
to
do you
do.
want it to be? What do you want it to be?
Oh, moving forward, I want to be even more involved in my activism, and I want to develop a talk and sort of specialize in talking about sustainability and spirituality.
Okay. When are you at? Sorry.
To be a spiritual being.
Yes, yes. I missed that question. I was going to ask you that. How is sustainability spiritual? Why don't you tell me how? From within.
I'm studying it, but the wonderful saying, I'm not standing on the land, I am the land. Like, that's a quote. We find very profound because we separate ourselves from the land. If you say you are the land, then a lot of things change in the way you perceive the world around you. And yeah, so I think bringing about your act of looking after the environment, showing your generosity of spirit, your mindfulness, um, your reverence for nature, your love for nature, if all that comes together, how is that not a spiritual act?
Yes.
How is that not a profound act of worship of the universe, a secular worship of the universe? So I'm developing the stock, so don't make me talk too much because I'm still learning.
Okay.
But moving forward, that's what I want to talk about.
Okay, so when are you at your happiest?
I think I lost you.
Oh, when are you at your happiest?
When am I at my happiest? Oh, when I'm with my daughter, but now she's graduated and she's in Boston. So when I have a moment to cuddle her, that's my happiest moment.
Wonderful.
But I don't have it right.
What can you not resist in life?
Oh, a good dance, a good DJ to dance to. I love dancing.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And what do you? Sorry, continue.
I can't resist a good dance.
Right. Alone or with someone?
I'm happy alone.
What do you love the most about Bali?
Oh my God, too many things. Well, nature. Just nature. I'm surrounded by it. I'm so lucky. I'm so lucky. So we always say, thank Mama Bali. That's what we say. Mama Bali has just nature all around me. It is the most nourishing, nurturing environment because there's so much beauty all around me.
I just remembered, aren't you coming out with some sort of book on sustainability? Is it the right time to talk about it or perhaps not?
No, I'm not coming out of a book. No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
I have written for a book, but it's not my book. So I can't talk about it.
Okay. So whenever it's out, you will. Okay. Sorry. So, Bandana, thank you so much for your time. I truly appreciate
So,
it, especially because you do not work on the weekends. And you made it for me. Thank you so much. And you look just so amazing with your authentic, true self, just thriving in the land of Bali.
I'm not fully true. I'm trying. Stop making me out to be like some saint. I'm trying. I'm a student. I'm learning, as we all should be.
Okay, so till we meet again.
Happy Independence Day, India. And
thank you to
everyone
every
health.
Indian.
And thank you, Rubina.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.